With twin-turbo diesel power, it's got enough grunt to tow the entire Australian mainland 3 centimetres to the right, while carrying a brick outhouse in the tray. Navara gets the job done first time, every time.
Utes and pickup trucks have been marketed that way for years, mostly to tradies and the mining and construction industries, but now families are one of the biggest buyers of these types of cars, and the Nissan Navara ST-X makes a very good argument for itself as an SUV alternative. From the front, the Navara looks big. Well, to be honest, it looks big from pretty much any angle, but I think this new front end really does look a little more aggressive and a bit tidier than the Toyota Hilux or the VW Amarok. I especially like the front light clusters here with the 4 separate little lamps there behind the clear shield. I think that's a really good look. At the back here, we've got a tow bar that gives us a 3,500 kilogram braked towing capacity, and the tray holds 1 tonne worth of stuff, and there's plenty of tie-down points for your gear here as well. I really like the way the Navara logo has been sort of embossed into the metal here. I think that's a great look, and the rear light clusters have a great look too. One interesting thing to notice about the bonnet of the Navara is that A, it's incredibly heavy, probably the heaviest I've ever felt actually, and there's no gas struts to hold it up for you. You've only got the old manual one here, which, to be honest, doesn't look all that sturdy, but I'm sure it's okay. The Navara is powered by a 2.3 litre 4-cylinder twin-turbo diesel engine that outputs 140 kilowatts of power and 450 newton meters of torque. Now, those stats are not the best in class. In fact, it's probably towards the smaller end, but when you're out on the road, you really don't notice the difference. This engine does an amazing job. Inside, and this Navara has been optioned with leather accented seats, which feel very nice, but they are also pretty much the only soft touch surfaces you're going to find in this car, with pretty much everything else being made out of fairly harsh, scratchy plastic. But that is to be expected in this category. After all, these cars are built for durability, not really comfort. But having said that though, this is about the best put together Nissan interior I've been in. Everything is just rock solid. There's no flex in anything, and that's really good. It's really well put together. The 8-inch center console screen is bigger than the one in the previous Navara, but having said that, it is still not great. This software is just not very good, to be honest, and the native navigation system doesn't work very well either. There is Apple CarPlay and Android Auto in the Navara, but you will need a USB cable to use them, and if I were you, I'd stick to Apple Maps or Google Maps. They work a lot better. Dual zone climate controls works really well, nothing much to say about those. And then underneath that, we've got some drive mode controls for the 2-wheel drive 4 high and 4 low modes, because this is indeed a proper 4x4. You can take it off-road. 4 high for a bit of gentle off-roading, and 4 low should you wish to ascend or descend a mountain. You can quite comfortably do that in the Navara. Button for the rear diff lock, hill descent control, and the parking sensor controls, and a 12-volt outlet there. We've got the drive mode selector here for towing, sport or normal, and we've got the gear selector with a nice chrome surround. You can change gears manually. There are no paddle shifters in the Navara. You can only do it from the gear shifter down here in the center console. Then we've got the heat seating controls, and now just a word on these. These sort of simple, old school looking buttons down here are perfect in the Navara. It's where you'd expect to see buttons like this. But what Nissan tend to do though is they use the same switchgear in all of their cars. So you'll see these buttons in the Nissan Leaf where they just don't really look very good. You want something a little more stylish there. I know it's a minor thing, but it's just something that irks me. A very small center bin with USB-C and USB-A ports, plus another 12-volt outlet. Nice big old school handbrake there. We've got 2 big dials up here for your speed and the tachometer with a small digital screen in between them. You can cycle through various display options with those. The steering wheel, which is actually nice and small, it does make you do a little bit more arm work just to turn the car around, but it has a really good feel to it, and it's covered in a nice sort of fake leather wrap. I don't think that's the real thing. The seats are leather accented, but there's not a lot of leg support here for my long legs anyway, and this is actually as low as these seats go, and I'm still very high in the cabin really, which gives me a great view out the front and out the sides. Can't really see very much out the back at all because of the tray. Everything kind of just falls away, so you will be relying on the reversing camera when you're getting in and out of parking spots, and good visibility too from the rear vision mirror. Oh, and one other cool little button I found here is the one that opens up the little window back to the tray there. How cool is that? The back seat of the Navara is a little squashier than I thought it might be, especially for me with my long legs. I'm 190 centimeters tall behind my own seating position and I'm pretty well jammed in. But if I was shorter or if I was a child, I'd be just fine. Rear seat passengers do get 2 air vents. There's a single USB outlet back here, which is important to note if you have more than one child and you're planning on going on a long road trip in the Navara. But it does have an almost perfectly flat floor. The transmission tunnel barely makes a ripple there, which is good for storing long objects that you don't necessarily want to put in the rear tray. Got an armrest here with 2 cup holders. And because you sit up so high, you actually don't have a great view out the window. I'm actually kind of having to crouch down to see out the window, which is, again, I'm tall, I know, but yeah. And you can't really move these seats at all because the cab ends just there. On the whole, I've not always been the biggest fan of Nissan's cars. I've sort of found them a little bit underwhelming. The Qashqai, the Tita, and in the case of the Leaf, just horrendously expensive. But I really like the Navara. I think this is the best Nissan I've ever driven. This car doesn't have any of the issues that those other Nissans have that I just mentioned. It's really well made, it's solid, it's fun to drive, and it's priced really well. The other thing I really like about the Navara is that despite the fact that it is a pickup truck, it doesn't really feel like a truck. It feels a lot more SUV-like, which is interesting because a lot of the pickup truck-based SUVs feel very truck-like, whereas this one doesn't. It actually really has a bit more of an SUV feel to it. It's a bit more nimble and a bit more fun to drive. I'll tell you what though, this car just glides over speed humps. I think Nissan have done a really good job on the suspension with this because you have all of the off-road capability, but not at the expense of comfort while you're driving on sealed roads. In terms of refinement, it's actually very quiet in here, especially considering we've got a diesel engine up front. There's not a lot of cabin noise, a little bit of road noise, but it's not an undue amount. Now, there's a couple of different drive modes here. There's towing, sport, and standard. Sport, I really can't notice any difference in performance at all. All it seems to do is make the engine rev higher and thus make more noise. So really, I think standard is for the win there. Not only are you riding up very high in the Navara, but the seating position within the cabin is also very high. This is actually as low as it goes, and I'm so high that I actually almost feel like I'm flying at the moment. You wouldn't want to take that last sentence I made out of context while I'm driving though. It's a good amount of pickup from the lights. You're not going to win any drag races with this, but you're also not going to be annoying people behind you by slowly crawling up the hill. There's a good amount of power. So would I choose one of these over an SUV? Maybe not. Mostly because I live in an inner area of the city and it's just not really all that practical to get around town throwing all of my gear in the back of a pickup truck when the SUV form factor would probably be a little bit easier to deal with. Plus, also parking space is a bit limited in the city and this is a very large car. So for me personally, no, but for a lot of people, it would be a very viable alternative. Starting at around $55,500 and about $5,000 more for how you see it here, the Nissan Navara ST-X, truly one of the most versatile cars on the road. It gives you that full four-wheel drive SUV experience, but with the added capability of being able to carry a ton of stuff in the rear tray. So if you're after an SUV but you want it in a slightly different form factor, then the Navara could be for you.